Yes, reading purists, audiobooks count as real books. Hello everyone, and welcome back to episode 36 of the Gamer Crafting Podcast. I am Angie, Indie Dyer, and General Mess. Hey everyone, it's Angie from the future. You might be wondering why this episode is not about Operation Social Justice, and it's because I recorded this episode like 2 weeks ago. If you're looking for more information about Operation Social Justice, or if you've never heard about it and want to know what the heck I'm talking about, you can head over to the channel and head to the playlist of minisodes, rants, and raves. Alternately, it should just be pinned to the top of the channel. Thanks, on with the episode. Today we are talking about audiobooks because this is a really complicated and exciting ploy in order for me to get your audiobook recommendations. So I will say that at the beginning, and then I will say it again at the end. If you have audiobook recommendations, please drop them into the comments below. I am all about the audiobooks. I freaking love audiobooks, and I literally always have. So let's talk a little bit about audiobooks. So audiobooks began in 1932. Was the emergence of audiobooks, and that was from the American Foundation for the Blind. So audiobooks began as a way to make reading more accessible. And then it was mostly an accessibility tool until the 1960s when cassettes came into use. And then they got another sort of jump in the 1980s with the emergence of CDs, compact discs. And then in 1990, or by 1994, like sort of the mid-90s, audiobook was like the standardly used audiobook was like the standard used term for what an audiobook is. So I don't know about you all, but I sort of have always grown up with audiobooks kind of being a thing. I remember getting audiobooks from the library when I was a kid. I was huge on the library. I've always been a really big reader, and I loved the library. I still love libraries, but like as a kid, a library was just, I don't know if any of you have either read or seen Matilda, but it, like the way it's described is this like huge magical place of potential. Yeah, libraries. I'm here for. I love a library. Look how excited I am about libraries. I adore libraries, and I remember going to the library when I was a kid, and I would pick out books, and then I would also pick out audiobooks, and I think I would normally listen to them in my room, and I just had this weird memory. I've probably not thought about this since I was a kid. I'm pretty sure that I had a cassette player that was shaped like a goose with a bonnet, like a Mother Goose cassette player. It's possible I have fabricated this, but I seem to have a very odd memory of a goose-shaped cassette player. I don't know. Okay. And I would usually listen to them in my room while I don't know, did whatever kids do when they're in their rooms, messing around with Beanie Babies or coloring or whatever. And I remember they would come in those plastic zip bags, and the handles would snap together, but it would be like the audiobook, and then there was usually like a book or a pamphlet, and then the handles would snap together. It's a very weird specific memory that I have, and it's also from when I was very young. The library was held in a different building to where it is now in the town that I grew up in. And it was smaller, and I remember like for the kids section, I think you had to go downstairs, and then there was like these twirling racks of the audiobooks. I don't know. This is one of those things that your brain just stores, and you're like, why is it that I can remember this and not to pick up bread at the store? So, I don't know. But anyway, so I remember getting audiobooks and stuff as a kid. My mom would frequently listen to books on tape in the car, when she was driving back and forth to work, etc. And so, I don't know, it was just always a thing that was just kind of normal to me. And it's just interesting that there was a period in my life where I didn't really listen to audiobooks. Like, by the time I was probably, I don't know, done with being a small kid, by the time that I was sort of real deep into traditional reading and, just reading a paperback, because I figured out as a kid that I could read faster than I could listen to an audiobook. And So I didn't really listen to loads of audiobooks once I was, real big into reading and checking out like a million books from the library at once. And I didn't really listen to audiobooks in high school either, because probably the same reason, and also being assigned reading and stuff. But I got back into audiobooks a couple of years ago, and I got back into audiobooks because I said to somebody, I really wish that I could read and, knit at the same time. And they were like, audiobooks exist and have in fact existed for a long time, so what are you even talking about? And obviously I thought, oh, well, yeah. So historically, the biggest changes that happened with audiobooks, sort of the biggest, big leaps for them was cassettes to CDs. So when we went from having to use cassettes to being able to use CDs, because I do remember that there was a few books, I think that my mom had, it must have been my mom, it wouldn't have been me, when I was really young, and because they were such big books, it was like a whole bunch of cassettes, like a whole set, like 12 or something cassettes of this book. But obviously once you get to being able to use CDs, because they can hold so much more information, you would have, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 in a sleeve instead of a big box. And then obviously CDs to being able to have things digitally, which means you don't have to carry anything around other than your phone and a pair of headphones. Or just your phone if you're a monster who listens to things out loud in public. So audiobooks began as a way for books to become more accessible, with them being created by the American Foundation for the Blind. So if you are crapping on audiobooks, then that's just straight up ableism. I'm just gonna drop that right here. That's completely non-debatable. It's fine if you yourself don't like audiobooks for whatever reason. You can read faster, or you don't like listening to people read out, or you struggle to connect with a narrator, performer, voice actor, whatever. There's a lot of reasons that you might not like audiobooks, and that's fine. It is fine to not like audiobooks. Nobody is gonna sit you in a room and tie you to a chair and force you to listen to audiobooks. But also, don't crap on other people liking audiobooks. It's fine for people to like things that aren't hurting anyone else. It's fine. So, I'm just saying, I personally think audiobooks are really great for long drives. Sarah and I are big fans of either story-based, Sarah and I are big fans of audiobooks or story-based podcasts. For long drives, I obviously really like audiobooks for knitting. If I'm feeling like I really just want to sit and knit, but it's something that's too complicated to be having something on TV, because you have to be looking at it or you'll mess it up. Obviously this is fine. This is just one by one ribbing. But if you're doing a complex color work, sometimes having something on TV is not a feasible option. So sometimes I really like to just have an audiobook on and just chill here on the couch and do some knitting and have some nice chill time, and that's fine. I also tend to listen to audiobooks sometimes while I'm cleaning, because cleaning is boring. Cleaning is boring and I don't like it. I feel like most people probably share my sentiments of cleaning being boring and not liking it, but unfortunately it being a necessary part of adulthood, which sucks. But sometimes audiobooks can take the sting out a little bit if you can just kind of zone out to listening to something cool or something exciting. You don't really have to think so much about how bored you are that you're having to wash the dishes again. And I will also say, wireless headphones are absolutely amazing for audiobook listening if that's what you're going to be doing, is moving around a lot. Audiobooks are really good for me when I am doing a lot of dyeing yarn. And so that's doing a lot of hand dyeing, especially. Well, I mean, everything's hand dyed, but I mean hand paints. The yarns that have to be very specifically, every skein is hand painted and take forever. Wireless headphones are absolutely the way to go for that. Once I discovered wireless headphones, I'm never going back when it comes to listening to audiobooks when I'm either cleaning or wandering around the house or dyeing yarn, because I am a woman of clumsiness, and if I can get a long cord trapped around a handle in the kitchen, or around something that's kind of hanging off the side of the counter or like around my own like buttons, it'll happen. So wireless headphones have been amazing. I'm not super 100% convinced about wireless headphones if you really want an amazing music listening experience, because that's different. But if you're listening to podcasts or audiobooks, wireless headphones, baby, all day long. I actually have 2 pairs. I do have them here. I have this pair that I bought on Amazon for, I don't know, like 12 pounds. What's this brand? Anbis? I don't even know. That doesn't even sound... It's not a brand I'm familiar with. But these are ones that clip around your ear. I don't like in-ear. I don't really like ones that just are supposed to sit in your ear because my ears push them out. So these loop around the back of my neck so that even if they do fall out of my ear, they're not going to go flying and I'm not going to lose them as easy. So I quite like these. And I think these are made for sort of like sport or whatever. But they're legit. They're really good. And so I use these, and I also have a big pair of like over-ear, more noise-canceling ones that I use a lot of times when I go traveling because they block out more sound on planes, etc. And I also tend to use those more in the winter because in the summer they make my ears sweat. You wouldn't think that your ears sweat, but if you're wearing them in the summer, then you're like, oh, that's gross. So I like these kind of in the summer, and I also wear these anyway. My point is, wireless headphones and audiobooks are like peanut butter and jelly, to use an Americanism. Listen, I know a lot of y'all Brits don't buy into peanut butter and jelly, and that's fine, but it's a match made in heaven. I'm sorry, it just is. Audiobooks are also really good for going on walks. Audiobooks are really good for wandering if you're walking your dog and you know, just, I mean, unless your dog is really good conversation, sometimes they are. Audiobooks can be really good for walking, whether it's with your dog or by yourself. I listen to audiobooks a lot when, you know, if there's some days where Sarah's not feeling well and I have to do the run into town to take packages. Usually it's her, but, you know, if she's either busy, she has other plans, or she's not feeling well, sometimes I'll do it. And I'll listen to audiobooks when I walk into town because I almost enjoy that more than listening to music when I walk into town. I know that she probably does the same. Audiobooks are also really good for laying in a dark room and avoid of existential angst. It's true, they are. If you're feeling particularly existentially angsty, I can recommend audiobooks and laying in a dark room to assuage your absolute angst at the dark void that the society around you has become. So let's talk about favorite audiobooks. So, like I said, I started listening to audiobooks again a couple of years ago. I will talk about some of my favorite audiobooks that I listened to last year, so in 2019, because I can't remember what I listened to in 2018. I could probably go and look, but yeah. So these are some of my favorite audiobooks from 2019, and yeah, let's get started. So, okay, I started off 2019 by listening to an audiobook called Fight Like a Girl by Clementine Ford, and it's about growing up as a girl. And this particular author's, I think that she's Australian, so this particular author, her perspective is an Australian perspective of growing up in Australia. I could be wrong about that. I better look this up before I go any further. Okay, update. Clementine Ford is Australian. I was right. I was really worried that I had misremembered and I would be misrepresenting this book for what it was. So she has that perspective, but there was a lot about it that really hit me, like square between the eyes. It hit me. The kind of stuff where you read it and you're like, oh, I feel really seen. Why don't you just tag me next time, Clementine Ford, when you're writing a book? Especially the stuff where she talks about when she was growing up and she was heavier set, to use I don't know if that's what she says in the book, but it's something that people say about younger, like, kids and teens. Oh, they're heavier set, like, I don't know. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to get into the semantics of how people should identify themselves because it's a very nuanced and personal thing. I don't mind saying that I'm fat, but there's some people that really don't like it. So, in any case, so there was a part in that book where she talks about growing up that way and how it was like this weird feeling of being invisible, like you're not really being seen, and how people are almost like encouraging you to develop a eating disorder. Anyway, there was a lot about it that just really just like whoosh, had me in an absolute complete flood of emotions. There's a lot more in the book as well, but that was the part that I was like, that really stuck with me, that made me really like reevaluate a lot of the things that I remembered from when I was a kid and from when I was a teenager, that had really colored my personal perception of myself and my own self-esteem. And it made me sort of re-examine those things with a new lens of being like, I'm a grown-up now, and I can see that maybe the way that people react isn't... Anyway, it's a whole thing. I'm not... This isn't therapy hour with Angie. You're not all my therapist. So, my point is that it's a very good book, and you should definitely check it out if that's something that interests you. Two other books, and now I'm naming it at the same time because they're part of the same, like, series, trilogy, universe, etc., was Parable of the Talents and Parable of the Sower. I said those in the wrong order. Sower is first and Talents is later. Both of them are by Octavia E. Butler, whose work I really freaking enjoy. Her writing style just brings me endless delight. And I think the first thing that I ever read by Octavia E. Butler was Fledgling. But I didn't listen to that on audiobook. I read it, I don't know, a few years, 4 years, I don't know, years ago now. An amount of time ago. Time is fake. And then I decided to read these because I just went back and wanted to read, after reading Fledgling, I was like, I need to read more of her stuff. I don't know, the writing style is amazing, and a lot of it is very science fiction-y, and damn if I didn't love it. So I went back and I listened to both of those on audiobook. I should have written down who read these books out. I'm pretty sure that Fight Like a Girl, Clementine Ford, she narrated herself. I will double check that. So hopefully I will be able to show you with a clever piece of text that I will put in editing as to who narrated these books. So Parable of the Talents and Parable of the Sower by, I said that in the wrong order again, by Octavia E. Butler. The audiobook narration was fantastic, which I feel like is a big component to enjoying an audiobook. There's been some audiobooks where I've been like, wow, I really like this book, but there's something about this narration that's really putting me off. And that's going to be like a super personal thing, of course. But anyway, the narration for this was fantastic, and the books themselves were fantastic. They were really gripping. There's a lot of it that's, as I think these were published in the 80s. And there's a lot of it where you're like, oh, well, that was weirdly, like, predictive of what was going to happen in the future, which is alarming. But, and so there is like it is a bit like sci-fi dystopia, kind of. So it's possible that there will be parts about Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, I said it in the right order that time, that you might be like, whoa, that's a little close to the bone, isn't it? And yes, viewer, it is. So, one of the other things that I listened to in 2019 that I really enjoyed was the first Binti book by Nnedi Okorafor, performed by Clever Text Animation, and I really enjoyed that. But for some reason, there's books 2 and 3 to the Binti series, and only the first one is on audiobook, and my understanding is that it's something to do with licensing or rights, I don't know, but I listened to the first one and it was amazing, and then obviously I had to go and read the rest. And I will also say that if you are watching this and thinking, I really freaking loved Binti, then I know that Lola of Third Vault Yarns did a Binti collection not too long ago. That was amazing and absolutely perfectly representative of the books, and we had a lot of fun talking about that. So I really liked that. I think that it encapsulates so much. They aren't like huge tomes. They are all relatively sort of short novellas, novelettes sort of thing, all 3 of them. And they are amazing, and I really enjoyed them for a lot of reasons. And I don't really even know what I can say about any of it without spoiling it, other than it's in space and there are aliens. And lots of different communities that interface in different ways, and it's fantastic, and all I can tell you is just to go and read it or listen to it. If you enjoy sci-fi, you'll enjoy it. Speaking of sci-fi, these are mostly sci-fi. These are like all sci-fi except for 2, which, I don't know, perhaps tells you a lot about my reading habits in 2019. So I also really enjoyed Do You Dream of Terra 2 by Temi O and narrated by Clever Text Animation. So this is the one that I liked so much that I told Lola of Third Vault Yarns, like, oh my gosh, you have to read this. It's amazing. I enjoyed it so much. And she did, and then we did a 2-part collaboration based on Do You Dream of Terra 2, based on like the visceral descriptions of space and planets and colors and everything within the book. So Do You Dream of Terra 2 is kind of like a new Earth story, but the twist of it is basically, well, it's going to take so long to get to New Earth that they have to take young teenagers on this ship with the older experienced astronauts, and they have to like do all this training, etc. Because like the older astronauts may potentially die before they reach this sort of New Earth or Terra 2. Again, I can't tell you loads without spoiler anything. It is a multi-point of view book, so if you like multiple points of view, I really like multiple points of view books, but I know there's some people that just really viscerally hate them, and that's fine, but I really like it. It's a multi-point of view book, and I really enjoyed it. I think it tackles a lot of really interesting things and themes of things that you might not necessarily think of when you're reading space stories or sort of New Earth stories. But yeah, Do You Dream of Terra 2 was really good. And then I think the last thing that I listened to in 2019 that, like the last audiobook I listened to in 2019, that was My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, which is, again, not a super long read. I think the audiobook is 3 hours, 3.5 hours. It's not super long, whereas most audiobooks, as you probably know if you listen to them, are sort of closer to, 12, 16. I listened to an audiobook that was 20 hours, and by the time I got to the end, I was so angry at the ending that it's like put me off of audiobooks for a couple of weeks as I like heal and recover from that ending that really upset me. Because sometimes that happens with books where you're like, I'm so invested in this story and these characters, and you're gonna do this to me? No. So I read My Sister the Serial Killer, and it was fascinating. It was such a gripping read. Listen, because we're talking about audiobooks. It was such a gripping listen. And where was I going when I was listening to this? I remember being in an airport. Oh, maybe this was back in Worldcon. Yeah, I think I got the order of things mixed up as to when I listened to them. I'm pretty sure I was heading to Worldcon when I listened to My Sister the Serial Killer. But I remember being in an airport and being like, I don't even care that my flight is delayed. This is so interesting. It's really interesting. It is kind of what it says on the tin. It is her sister, the serial killer, but it's sort of, you're kind of unraveling sort of a mystery as you listen and or read through. It's really good. It's definitely very gripping. If you're looking for something a bit short and sweet to be a bit gripping and give you a bit of escapism, I really have to recommend My Sister the Serial Killer, again narrated by Clever Text Animation. So I don't know who Clever Text Animation is, but they're getting a lot of work in the audiobook industry. This is what I get for not making better notes. So far for 2020, I told you that about the audiobook that made me angry a couple weeks ago. So I'm not going to talk about that book because I was like, no, I hate this. I hate this ending. It's made me like ragey. It's fine. I'll get over it probably eventually in like 5 years when I've had time to like heal. But I'm about to start today. I haven't actually started yet, but I'm about to start The Raven Tower by Ann Leckie. Obviously, Ann Leckie is very well known for her sort of sci-fi and space operas, but this is sort of a bit more of a fantasy from Ann Leckie, so I'm really excited to listen to that. And also I'm trying to like read a bit more fantasy stuff, I guess. Obviously because 2019 was very heavily and aggressively tilted towards sci-fi. For those of you who watched my big announcement podcast a while back, linked here, you will know then that that I'm writing sci-fi stuff, so I'm trying to not like read as much sci-fi while I'm writing it. Not because I'm worried that I'm going to steal ideas by accident, it's just the way that I prefer to work, I think. So I'm going to be listening to The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie, and I'm really excited to get that started. So I will probably, after I finish recording this, just like leap right into it. Well, I'll probably have to edit this first, so I will leap into it at some point. So I will say that, so those are some of my favorites that I've listened to kind of in the last year or so. I would love to hear your audiobook recommendations. I am always up for an audiobook. You may also be interested to hear that there is some yarn coming soon. I don't have it in my hands yet, or I would show you. It has not arrived yet, but it will be arriving soon. I went a bit off-piste, and I decided to order some new bases. And one of the new bases that I ordered is a chunky sparkle yarn, which is exciting. Who doesn't love a bit of chunky sparkles? And I also ordered a chunky weight. It's like a merino and yak blend. And given how soft the yak sock is, I've been really struggling to find yak in a chunkier base, and I found it in an actual chunky base. So I will show you those when they arrive, but I don't have them yet. I will show them to you when I get them, and I will dye them up and do some new colors probably towards the end of the month. But that's exciting and coming. I don't have any ideas for themes, so you can also drop that into a comment below if you have an idea for a theme that you would like to see on some chunky sparkly yarn along with some other bases. Then drop your recommendations below. You can also drop your recommendations for audiobooks down below, because I'm reaching the end of my library that I have built up over the span of a couple of months of me buying audiobooks here and there when stuff's on sale. Obviously, the way that most people listen to audiobooks is through Audible, and that's how I listen to them too, but Amazon doesn't need any more promotion, do they? So in any case, please do drop your recommendations for yarn themes and audiobooks below, and those are both basically for selfish reasons. So sue me. I'm the boss here. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and you can tap the bell for notifications if you want to be notified when we post a new video. And we might potentially have some other news coming up relatively soon. We will also be back on Saturday for our regular live stream, gaming, chatting, knitting, crafting, talking about cake usually live stream. At 9 p.m. London time, so do pop in and join us if you are feeling like you need some company or feeling a bit bored. You can either, chat, or you can decide to just listen to other people chat. Obviously, everybody is welcome to come and hang out. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you next week for a podcast on why... I don't know what next week's podcast is on. I got my dates mixed up. Tune in next week for a podcast on something. It's a mystery. This is the cliffhanger ending. Tune in next week for a podcast about something.